Dum, 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 dum. Welcome everyone to the Progressive Mind Show. My name is SENAALINCO. We are great. We are doing wonderfully well. Sorry we had to come a little late, and we are grateful to all the audience, our audience who have chimed in already. We sincerely apologize for the little late in the start of the show. Today we're going to be talking about Juneteenth, the diaspora connection. It's very important that the diaspora comes to grips with what Juneteenth means, and so on this show today, we have this great political scientists who are going to be helping us understand what Juneteenth stands for and how the diaspora can feel or can start working our community into connecting the history, because it is Juneteenth is tied to the African diaspora or the African's destiny. And it's very important that we shine light on that and start creating more awareness. So we're going to be going into the conversation right away. But before that, we'll take the Captain Mike segment. When we come back, the show will continue right after this. Again, stay tuned. This is the Progressive Mind Show. For those of you who have joined us on Facebook, we encourage you to share the feed on there and then on YouTube as well. Captain Mike will give us his updates, and then right after that, we shall be back. Captain Mike, welcome to the show. Pardon the slight delay. You can take it from here. Let's see what we got.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, let me have to figure out how to mute there. Hey, today's a really great day outside. If you get a chance, make sure you get out there. Winds are coming off the lake, so it's a little cooler than it's been the past few days, but beautiful day. And it's going to continue tonight, where we're going to get down to about 58 degrees. Nice and clear outside. Tomorrow, it's going to start cool, but it's going to warm up pretty quickly. Get up to about 88 degrees, maybe close to 90, and possibly some rain late. Friday's going to be hot, really, but not as muggy as we're used to, because it's not.
Understand what Juneteenth stands for and how the diaspora can.
Winds are going to be out in the southwest, and we're going to have rain off and on. Friday, Saturday is going to be really, really nice.
To the African diaspora or the
80 degrees, winds are out of the southwest. Sunday, pretty nice too. We're going to have a chance of rain off and on all day. So clouds in and out. Some sun's going to peek through. Not as nice as Saturday. Monday, rain is going to start early, but it's going to clear throughout the day. High of about 70 degrees, a little cooler. Thursday, also a little cooler, high about 70 degrees. Going to be a nice day, get down to about 55. So keep those sweaters handy. And Wednesday, high of about 77 degrees. A little bit breezy out there, but overall a really nice day. So we have a nice week ahead of us. So make sure you do get out there. Maybe some spotty showers off and on for a couple of days. But basically, we're going to have a really nice, cooler pattern come in the next few days. In sports, the White Sox defeated Tampa Bay Devil Rays 8-7, so they have the best record in baseball. And the Cubs are going to be in New York playing the Mets tonight about 6:10 p.m. Now, in the health and fitness report, we're going to continue from last week with the problems with heat illnesses. We have to be really careful this summer because the heat is going to return. It's going to get hot later on in the summer, so let's make sure we stay safe out there. So we're going to talk about heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Heat exhaustion and heat strokes, they happen when the body is unable to cool itself, and it cools itself by sweating. That sweat evaporates and cools off the body. Now, what is heat exhaustion? Well, we can tell what's happening when we get heated. We were exhausted in the heat. We have heavy sweating, cool, pale, clammy skin, a fast, weak pulse, nausea or vomiting, muscle cramps, tiredness, dizziness, headaches, and fainting. If someone has heat exhaustion, or if you have heat exhaustion, make sure you move to a cool place. Loosen your clothing. If you have a lot of clothes on, take off a few. Make sure you have light fitting clothes. Put on cool, wet cloths or take a cool bath if you can. Sip cool water or a sports drink and get immediate help if you're throwing up, your symptoms get worse, or these symptoms continue for more than an hour. Now, heat stroke, very, very, very important to get help immediately. This is a bad condition. This is when your body, your temperature, you can't cool your core off and your body temperature is higher than 103 degrees. You have hot, red, dry, or sometimes damp skin to the touch. Your fast and strong pulse. You have a headache, dizziness, confusion, nausea, and sometimes you may pass out. If you see any of these symptoms, notice them in yourself or someone else, call 911 immediately. Move to a cooler, drier place. Get the person's temperature down as quickly as you can. Once again, try cool towels or clothing and put them in a cool bath. And don't give the person anything to drink. That's the difference between heat exhaustion and a heat stroke. Now, just a few tips to try to prevent that. Wear light, loose-fitting clothing. Drink plenty of fluids. Stay hydrated, stay hydrated, stay hydrated. Can't say that enough. You think I can, but I can't. Stay hydrated. Take it easy during the hottest parts of the day, in the mid and later in afternoons. Try not to plan anything during the hottest parts of the day. And get acclimated. Sometimes, like this year, we went from cool weather to really hot. So try to take your time to get used to working out in the sun if you're going to do it little bits here and there, and know your risk level. And if you have any type of health-related problems, or if you're young, you have young children, or if you're up in age, or if you're taking medication that may help bring on some of these conditions, be careful out there. So those are our tips, and that's the fitness report. And going back to you, Sena.
My brother, thank you so much for always coming up with the latest updates in these three categories. We are grateful to have you. We are hoping we can get you next week to keep updating us.
Oh, yeah.
Now, have a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy the weather. It's very beautiful out there. Right after this show, I am sure to get out, go to the lake, get some breeze, and feel nice. My brother, have a wonderful evening.
See you next week.
All right, back to my guest. We have Ted in the house. We will try and go straight into the reason why we're here this evening. Welcome, everyone. Again, this is the Progressive Mind Show. I'm your host, Alinko. Today is June 16th, and we are glad to be coming your way. Just bear with us as we try to get this going. It's 6:10, 10 minutes past 6 p.m. here in the beautiful city of Chicago. In 3 days, we will celebrate Juneteenth, which the Senate has recently and unanimously passed a bill to establish as a federal holiday. Juneteenth is an abbreviation of June and 19th, which represents the month and the day that slavery ended in 1865. 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, an announcement was finally made in Galveston, Texas. This important date in history brought joy and astonishment among the slaves as federal orders were announced that all enslaved people were now free. To many Black Americans, Juneteenth is also known as Freedom Day or Emancipation Day, and it is considered a second Independence Day in America. But do the African community know this? Are we even aware, and do we feel connected? This is what we are going to be going into this evening. But before that, this day is marked by proud celebrations similar to the July 4th holiday, where families and friends gather to celebrate with the cookout and parades. On today's show, we will ask, what does Juneteenth mean for all Black people in the diaspora? How can we Africans and Caribbeans recognize such momentous celebration? How is it tied to our destiny and our own struggle? And on this bill is our usual when it comes to such matters. Ted Williams, who is with the political science faculty, City of Colleges in Chicago. Additionally, we have Dr. Ya Asantewa. I added Ya Asantewa. She didn't tell me Ya Asantewa, but I just added that. Dr. Asantewa is also here. She is a political science professor at DePaul University here in Chicago. Also, Professor ADIBE, Professor Clement ADIBE, a political science professor at DePaul University. The scholars are going to help us understand why we're here this evening, and please help share the feed on Facebook and on YouTube. Now, I'll go to my great guest, Professor Clement ADIBE. It's a beautiful day. How are you doing?
I'm muted. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
My pleasure. I know you went to Nigeria recently.
Yes, I did.
That was a quick trip, man.
It was a very quick trip. Yeah.
We talked the day before, in a few days, and then when I reached back out to you, you said, "Oh, brother, I'm at the airport." And before I knew it, you were sending an email. I'm back. I'm like, bro. Going to Africa is not like going from here to Indiana, So
I know.
You made that so quick.
That's what happens when you're dealing with Call of Duty.
Okay.
I still had classes at DEPAUL to deal with end of quarter and all of that.
Okay.
Sister knows about that. My brother also knows about that. So that was why it was quick, very quick.
Excellent. Professor Asantewa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I am very well. And Ted Williams III, my brother, again, nice to see you. So let's start with the lady. Why am I calling you Asantewa today? But I hope you don't mind, right?
No, not at all.
Okay, she was a warrior, great lady. So anyway, Dr. Asantewa, what is your observation when you come to, we'll go to what Juneteenth stands for and all of that. I'll have Ted do that. But for you personally, what does it mean to you, and just your observation when it comes to the Caribbean community and their connectivity to Juneteenth?
Okay, I would like to start by saying that I'm a professor of history, so I just wanted to let you know that at
okay.
But in terms of what it means to me, particularly being from Caribbean parentage, it becomes very, very important because in the Caribbean, I think there's a heightened sense that we are a displaced people. And sometimes you can lose that, particularly in urban settings in the United States. You can lose the urgency of that reality. And when we find occasions where we can pause and we can talk with specificity about what took place in our past and what occasions the bulk of us anyway to be in the Americas, it is always a welcome event. So for me, it is very welcome. For me, it is a chance where we can, you know what I'm saying, become uncloseted in ways, because in many ways we feel and participate in a reality that we cannot communicate to the mainstream. There's just too much resistance against a lot of these ideas. So a day like this provides us a chance to really be truthful and to solicit respect for what our ancestors went through.
Ted Williams, as Africans, we are just getting warmed up into what Juneteenth stands for and all of that. So from your own, this is your history. It is our history too. But tell us what Juneteenth stands for.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you guys for hosting this conversation. It's always an honor to join you, Brother Alinko, for these very critical discussions. And so I just want to say that, what Juneteenth represents, as you have already summarized and eloquently stated, the overall message of emancipation and how emancipation really came in waves, right, in America, from the 13th Amendment to the Juneteenth holiday, which obviously 2 years later they found out the 250,000 enslaved Africans in Galveston, Texas, found out that they were now free. But then really what you have to understand is that it took another 100 years. Another 100 years for those freedoms to be protected by the federal government through the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Housing Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement. And so I think we must understand in this is that for years this has been a period of celebration for the African American community. I can tell you that the last 2 years, I have never seen the level of attention to this holiday that I've seen in the last 2 years. I've never seen level of attention to what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and that we've just seen recently in the last few weeks. And so in many ways, we're excited that people are coming to the party, that America's coming to the party. But these issues have been here for hundreds of years. And the real question we must stop and ask ourselves today is not the question of, it's not a question surrounding a celebration, But really, it's a question for me, or a statement of agitation, where we need to continue to press America to be what it says that it is on paper, and to continue to extend the liberties that have been on paper for other people for hundreds of years. We must continue to extend them through this time. So if we don't talk about that, right, and if we don't talk about where we still have to go, we've really wasted an opportunity. And I think conversations like this are so critical and so important. And for that reason, I'm very happy to be here. I think you're muted, brother.
Yes, you're right, Professor ADIBE. Yes, that was me. That's a challenge of these things nowadays. But thanks for alerting me, Brother Ted. Professor ADIBE, so correct me if I'm wrong. You were a political science professor at DEPAUL, or if not, if you're political, I mean, if it's just professor of history, please make that correction before we proceed.
Oh no, you got mine
correct.
Absolutely right. It's a sister that you got wrong. Yeah.
Excellent. So bring us home and give us your own view of Juneteenth as an African professor in America.
Oh, in fact, as an African, you know, to be honest with you, I think Ted and my sister hit the nail on the head. It is a momentous event, and I agree that it is in many ways a celebration. But personally, I feel bad about it. There's nothing to celebrate about slavery, or that one was freed from slavery. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. It's a crime against humanity. And in the time that we live in, I think it's instructive to just see how we got here. A year ago, about this time, I think the former President Trump, basically decided that he was going to have a major event, irrespective of the date. It took a backlash from folks in the South and civil rights leaders, and quite frankly, Americans of all races who are familiar with history and the significance of Juneteenth, to say, why would you have a rally like this? Especially for a president who has been particularly divisive and unnecessarily so. So he said, well, he was going to change it. He had no idea what Juneteenth meant and all of that, which is remarkable because, this is the president of the United States. So to hear that the Senate of the United States, in these very divided times that we live in, voted unanimously to have this as a federal holiday, is really gratifying. They have not agreed on anything lately, and I think we should roll with that to say, look, these are people. Many of them have absolutely no respect for Black people, but on this they united and said, we're going to have a federal holiday. Let's press that button further. We do need to move this to the continent as well. Juneteenth should be a holiday in Africa and in the Caribbean to commemorate this particular event that we got here. And as Ted said, I think one of the more remarkable things about it is that we still have to struggle for rights. We have to struggle for rights for Africans in Africa. We have to struggle for rights for Africans in Jamaica. We have to struggle for rights for Africans in the United States. Why is it that Africans everywhere have to struggle for rights that other people have as a given? So it's a statement about where we are, that 160 years after Juneteenth, we are still talking about Juneteenth, and not as history, but as a struggle.
Yeah, thank you for a great response. And I think that is the first I'm hearing that this has to be recognized on the continent of Africa and the Caribbean as well. And this is why we're here. We're trying to see the connectivity. Even though some know that there's so many out there who who doesn't even recognize it, that our destinies and our struggles are the same. Ted, you, again, I'll come to you because you know this history more than any of us, at least on this panel. So tell us, before Juneteenth, before the event of before emancipation, how things were for Black people in general in this country. Of course, we're not go into the whole history, but there's some also who never have gotten to know of the story of what actually happened and how significant the emancipation of slavery is to the Black community. So maybe give us a little background of what it was before we got to where we are now.
So I think that it's important to understand the totality of slavery as an economic institution in America, and how interwoven this institution was with every aspect, sort of into every aspect of American culture. It's interesting because in the United States alone, there were only about 500,000 enslaved that came on the shores of this country. The vast majority went to South America, places like Brazil. There were 12.5 million that were taken during the transatlantic slave trade from about 1525 to 1866, the vast majority going to South America. But at the height of slavery in America, there were about 30,000 enslaved Africans who were being brought to the country every single year. And today, there are about 40 million African Americans in this country, the vast majority of whom draw their direct lineage right back to those enslaved Africans. We are not that far out from this period. I think, when I was growing up, I used to think that this was ancient history. I was born in the 70s, okay? And I used to think that, when I was growing up, I used to watch these stories and I thought, American history was, man, people came here, they were treated badly. But then 1863, Abraham Lincoln emancipated the slaves and everything's been okay since then. And that we were able to move around. I used to think that, no, that it wasn't fully okay, but then Dr. King came along, right? And that's how American history is taught. Dr. King came along in the 60s and then everything was okay from there. And when you look at the issue of the exploitation of labor, which is truly the American capitalist story. Now, I'm not here to, I know people love to throw labels out and call folks Marxists and call them this and call them that, but you cannot deny how American capitalism has always survived off of free and cheap labor. We have never, ever been in a place where we've paid people fairly. I don't know if our economic system would last if we did. We went from indentured European servants in the very beginning. Then they tried Native Americans as the enslaved. Then they found this labor pool in Africa. And then after Africans were freed, the 13th Amendment, as you know, only freed a certain class of people. A certain group of people. Those who were incarcerated were still legally and are still legally, according to the United States Constitution, are still legally the enslaved and can be exploited and manipulated and abused in any way possible based on what is in the United States Constitution. And there is still a great tie to American capitalism off of that free and cheap labor. Then you move from there into the 1970s and our trade agreement between Nixon initiated in 1972 with China, and we began to get cheap and free labor from China and then therefore India. And now we are in a situation where many of the conversations that we're having around the border are questions about who's coming across the border and why are they coming, and for our southern border, and they're coming primarily from Mexico and Central America for cheap and free labor. So if America paid people what people were owed or due, this entire system would fall apart. Now, having said all that, I'm not saying throw the system away. I'm not saying that. I'm saying pay people fairly. The issues of slavery are the same issues that we're dealing with in the labor movement in many ways today. Dr. King understood that, which is why when he died, he was fighting for workers. And that's what we have to do today. And so when we talk about this issue, we talk about the ubiquitous impact, if you will, of slavery, we must understand that the vestiges of this slavery and the impetus behind it in the economic system is still here. And we must address it today so that we can move forward differently and better than we were in the past.
Powerful. Asantewa, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but from your view, why haven't Juneteenth been that significant in the past as it is today? Of course, now it's a federal holiday, but why do you think it's taking us so long?
I can answer this question very simply. Americans are in heavy denial of U.S. history. I have a play called 1619, The Journey of the People. I'm performing it virtually in some other places, a bunch of places this weekend, as a matter of fact. I can tell you for a fact, I think we got a muting issue potentially. Maybe yeah. If someone else could, mute. I think that, I can tell you for a fact that the very mention of 1619, the very mention of it, causes people to be enraged. Do you understand what I'm saying? Enraged. My show, which is a show strictly about American history, has been on the internet recently attacked by groups who are denying this history. America does not want to talk about Juneteenth. They don't want to talk about Wall Street. The only reason why we're talking about it now, the only reason is because I believe that George Floyd's death was the culmination of, I believe, a biblical prophecy. Because in the book of Genesis, the Bible says that God told Abram that they would have 400 years of slavery for the Israelite people. And after that 400 years in Egypt, they would then take possession of the land. They would be blessed beyond belief, and things would change. Their conditions would change, as we know the story of Moses telling Pharaoh, "Let my people go." We know what happened with them. Well, I think there are clear parallels between what has happened to the African American community and what happened in biblical text around the Egyptians and the Israelites, and also the story of Joseph, a number of biblical stories. But if you look at George Floyd's death, it occurred in the 400th year that we were in this country. In August 20th of 1619, 20 enslaved Africans arrived on a Dutch ship in Point Comfort, Virginia. We wrote our play to commemorate August 20th, 2019. That 400th year in which George Floyd, that following summer, was killed in front of the world while they all sat at home, began to move the needle. And people began to talk about this issue of injustice and reparations and this 400 years. I mean, we've never seen this, ever. Yeah. Why did it happen now? I believe that we are in many ways, a prophetic year in this country. And that justice is coming. And it's exciting. And it's a blessing. But I will tell you this. There are many forces in this country who don't want to see this. So, yes, corporate America's on Juneteenth now. They're on these things. I'm happy. I hope they keep going. But I can tell you, if we don't press and we don't educate or we don't work on these things, all the progress that has been made in this last year, this radical, this phenomenal year, it'll all be lost if we don't keep our eye on the prize.
Man, powerful. Thank you for sharing, Ted Williams. And I resonate with the 400 years point that you made, which is the reason why we did the event, the exchange ceremony at the DePaul Museum, which you were a part of. Yes, exactly. This was a vision that God gave us, and so we thought that 400 years, and that 400 years was in 2019, and in that same year was the year of return. The president of Ghana had declared to be a year that all African Americans, all Black people, all African Americans in the diaspora could return back to, or should return back to Ghana. And so the door of no return. Okay, if anybody knows the history of slavery from West Africa, from Ghana specifically, there was a door of no return. Now the door of no return is called the door of return. And so we wanted to capture that moment because we didn't know if we're going to live to see another moment like that. And that is why the exchange ceremony happened at the DeSable Museum. And God willing, we're going to do it again this year. So what's his name? Professor ASANTEWA, please. I know that Ted made a couple of comments that you probably, or statements, and maybe brother Clement too. So if you want to, add your 2 cents, or maybe something you want to respond directly to the question that I asked, please go ahead and do so. ASANTEWA.
I would just want to say that in college, and I went to college in the 1990s. I became a part of a Black nationalist study group, and we kind of did the hyper critical race theory approach to everything. And one of the things we did was, as young people, make mockery of, people rejoicing that you're out of slavery, not understanding that the Emancipation Proclamation actually released you to do work for the U.S. Army and not to just go visit your cousin in California. It's like we were almost laughing at the fact that the people didn't clearly read or understand, or it wasn't explained well enough to them that, you're actually getting into greater debt. Even General Gordon Granger, who goes into Galveston and declares that these people are free, is very clear in that very statement, that special report number 3, to say that listen, you all people won't be idle, and don't come give yourself to the U.S. Army. We don't need you there now that the war is over. Stay where you are, which in effect means stay on the plantation where you are. You know what I'm saying? Just under different terms. So as I have gotten older, though, and taught history, like, I have been so humbled when you look at the actual facts on the ground, when you look at what a people had to endure. I'm almost speaking to my younger self and saying, like, shame on you. You need to have respect. When you hear that President Abraham Lincoln declared to the South in October of 1862, if you don't put down your arms, I'm going to free the enslaved people in your territory on January 1st. 1863, and that African people came from all over. That is, the African people living in the United States who were not then recognized even as full human beings, much less as Americans, so I won't call them African Americans, but they came from all over, and they prayed the whole night. They did not close their eyes because they were too afraid that if they let their guard down, Master Abe would change his mind. That was the first watch night service that existed. And when I look back at the assumptions that we had, just, you use history out of a book and you lack the empathy that comes from really understanding that I don't even know what day of the week it is. My only task is to work every single day from sun up to sundown. And now I hear a possibility that I could be free. It doesn't matter the conditions. It doesn't even matter what will happen tomorrow. I should celebrate this because it is a pivot from everything I've ever known, my mother has ever known, my grandmother has ever known. It is an honest pivot. And so, yeah, it's that kind of respect that I try to engender when I talk to students and whomever. I was just talking to some 6th graders today about Juneteenth, just to just understand that they didn't have control over no part of their body. They didn't have guarantees they would be alive tomorrow, and none of us do, but they didn't have real ones that they would be alive. You were disposable, and there was no reprisal for someone acting in violence towards you. And then suddenly you get a modicum of freedom. That's a huge deal. And we've got to stand in that space and help celebrate that idea and demand respect. I hear all kind of things about, well, it's not going to be celebrated here. And we're going to have to demand respect. When I first went to DePaul, they weren't even giving us Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday off. So I'm saying, wherever you are, when this becomes federal law and it's in place, demand respect for it. You know what I'm saying? Because this nation exploited and run a people down, took their humanity and exploited their wealth, as I heard Professor Williams explaining, took everything from them, and now you're gonna like turn the other eye or turn, decide that you're not gonna celebrate because it has no meaning for you. We have got to be the ones that say, it is unacceptable,
right,
for you not to recognize this.
right. No, that was powerful, Dr. Adibe. I was going to ask a follow-up question, Ted and Dr. ASANTEWA. When people give a pushback when it comes to issues of the African American community, what would you want to say to them? Because you hear when people say, "Oh, it's way past slavery, and it's 2021. Get over it already. Why are you still talking about slavery?" I mean, I'm sure you hear this, and so when you get this pushback, what would you want to say to those people who think that way? Should African Americans consistently talk about rights, talk about freedom, talk about injustice, as we do day in and day out? Because again, we know there are pushback. So we want to know your response to people who are still thinking that, including Africans. I know there are a lot of Africans who think that, because I'm an African, I'll talk to them. But Dr. Adibe, you want to maybe respond to this and also give us maybe a historical context. Has there been any African politician or scholar that added their voice to the struggle of the African American here in the United States? Because I know Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and Martin Luther King were buddies on these subjects. So I don't know if there's any connection there or any personality that you can refer us to.
Okay, thanks. I'm unmuted. First, let me just make 2 quick interventions.
Okay.
On what Dr. ASANTEWA said and Ted.
Okay.
Beginning with ASANTEWA's point about respect for those who survived this ordeal. Not everyone did. Not every Black in the United States was a slave. There were free Black people in the United States before Juneteenth. But specifically those who endured this and those who have kept.
For clarification's sake, who were these freed Black people?
Oh yeah, there are many African Americans, well, in those days Blacks, who bought their freedom way before emancipation.
Okay.
But the ordeal it takes, I think sometimes we forget what our people endured. That these were survivors, and they were extraordinary human beings, because everything was designed to break them, break their spirit, break them physically. Many did, but a lot survived, and I think that point about respect is very well taken, and I think we should spread that message. Ted's point about capitalism and Floyd, I'm glad he brought in George Floyd. I will add one more thing, that is the atmosphere that was created by the presidency of Donald Trump that helped propel a lot of this stuff. In many ways, they helped answer the question that you posed. Those who say, "Oh, get on with it. Slavery is over. None of that. Civil rights happened half a century ago." You remember Obama's presidency? We were now in a post-racial world. Racism was over in the United States. We elected a Black president. Well, I don't know anyone who questions that anymore. The past 4 years showed that this thing didn't go anywhere. Maybe it took a vacation, but it certainly didn't disappear. So I think when you layer that on top of Floyd, then we begin to see why Juneteenth has become this thing that a lot of people living in the United States didn't know much about it, and now everyone knows about it. And so it's something that I wanted to highlight there. So on the question of Africans, well, the thing about slavery, and I'm not a historian, I think it's been taught very poorly in Africa. It's not taught very well at all, well, if at all. in the United States is taught haphazardly. Slavery impacted Africa terribly, and perhaps unlike the United States, it's not even broached at all. We've got a few museums in Accra, in Badagry, Lagos, one in Senegal, and that's about it. Okay, the curriculum doesn't address it. So many Africans are completely unaware of Juneteenth.
Yeah.
There are not very many Black elites in Africa who emotionally, okay, relate to the challenges of African Americans. Because look, you have to give credit to colonialism. Okay, the divide was complete.
Okay?
Yeah. So Africans had to deal with their own problems. African Americans dealt with their own problems. Caribbeans dealt with their own problems. I mean, the divide and conquer was complete. It was tough. There is the effort of Kwame Nkrumah, and I will add from my own country, Nnamdi Azikiwe, both of whom, by the way, were taught by African Americans at Lincoln University. They got that consciousness, and were able to propagate it in their respective territories. Well, the rest is history. They didn't go that far because that whole process was interrupted. So we went back to our usual problems. So something has to be said about that.
Dr. When you say it was interrupted, there are a lot of folks who don't know the history that you know.
Oh, okay. Well, look, much of post-colonial Africa reverted to authoritarian rule by military, and that intellectual, robust, early intellectual effort that saw Pan-Africanism as a global project just died. Okay, so people were dealing with curfews and everyday interruptions of their liberty, and they I think that international framework was completely broken.
Yeah,
that's what I meant by the interruption, and I don't think we've recovered it, quite frankly.
We have,
but the thing then is, we have to go to South Africa to see where I see the link to the contemporary challenges that we have in the US. And that's why the capitalism thing and cheap labor, I wrestle with it. I'm a political scientist. I like the fact that Ted mentioned, look, the exploitation of labor is in fact one of the driving forces of discrimination. But why is it always blacks?
Yeah.
Okay. Capitalism is a global enterprise. Why is capitalism not exploiting, in quotation marks, Japanese? Why is it not exploiting Belgians? Why is it always blacks? So there is something viral about anti-black racism that we have to confront as a human race. I mean, there's racism and there is racism. The one against blacks is extraordinary.
Why is that, Ted? Now, Dr. Adibe, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I wanted Ted to, because I mean, among us on this platform, I think his ancestors and Asantewa's ancestors literally bore this pain. And so, why is that, Ted?
Well, I think that,
and then you can tie in the question that I asked earlier. Why people always push back when anybody wants to talk about the Black community, and when anybody wants to talk to the Black community about issues that are challenging to them, what would you say to the people that say it's enough already?
Well, it's foolish. I mean, you wouldn't tell the Native American people that there's enough when you look at the millions of Native Americans that were exterminated on this continent. You wouldn't tell them that it's enough, get over it. You wouldn't say that to Jewish people who were killed during the Holocaust. You know, Americans, there are a couple of different ideological challenges that are happening here. You have the notion of meritocracy and the idea of the Puritan work ethic, that your outcome economically is a byproduct of your intestinal fortitude coupled with your moral composition. And we know that that is a fallacy in many ways. So you have that identity, that idea, that ideology, and then you have on top of that this notion that Americans don't talk a lot about, which is eugenics. And the idea, Thomas Jefferson wrote in a book called Notes on the State of Virginia, that he believed that African people were innately inferior in the endowments of body and mind. And yet Thomas Jefferson obviously had children with his enslaved Africans. And so there's always been this weird existence for people of color of African descent in this country where America has accepted parts of them, particularly the physical parts. Mm-hmm. This is why you see African people of African descent as America's greatest entertainers and athletes and that sort of thing. There's always been this acceptance of African people in that space, but still the concomitant denial of their humanity at the same time. And I think that is what has occurred since the beginning of the existence here. And I don't think it's actually that much different today. I think that individually African people, people of African descent, African Americans, can find individual acceptance. I know that I found it in my life, and I'm certainly people who have found it. I think that, that there is this idea in America, once again, this meritocracy. If you work hard enough, you can get to a certain level. This is very true, and I don't deny that at all. But I also think that there is still this level of in some ways, a denial of your personhood, your ethnic identity along the way. So it is one thing to become successful in America. It's another thing to be successful and be ethnically aware.
Yeah.
You have to almost, if you want to be successful in America, deny the same things that many other people deny about history and about inequality and those sort of things. And then you can sort of climb the ladder. But if you are in that way too black, if you will, that doesn't happen. And I think there's a heavy level there, this eugenics story. I did a film called Human Zoos a couple of years ago I was in. And it was a story, and I was, very proud to be a part of that. And to be fair, it was funded and founded by some folks of European descent. And so Americans, I will say this very clearly, African Americans have always had allies, white allies in America, which is an important part of the story too. So I don't think this is a monolithic sort of conversation. People think you talk about race and you hate other people. That's not true at all. In fact, we've all sort of needed other people of goodwill and good conscience to actually help all of us. And I want to make sure that that's clear as well. Mm-hmm. But in that story is a story historically after Thomas Jefferson of a racial classification, identity, and inferiority that was based on pseudoscience, that was based on bad theology, that ultimately pushed this narrative that people of African descent were subhuman. And ladies and gentlemen, you got to understand, we've never really wrestled with that question.
Yeah.
And so we still, to this day, I read comments and things and news articles and stuff. And when people of color, African descent, act a certain way, in those comments, boy, there those folks go again. They're just like animals. Look at these animals in the streets of Chicago. Those things don't come out of the blue. They come from a long history. And so I think, Alinco, this is what we're talking about. Those things have not changed because we have not done the hard work of digging up the soil and digging up the dirt and saying that and replacing this bad theology, bad science, bad ideology with something different. I will tell you, I am hopeful, however, because once again, the movement that we are experiencing in this past year is unlike anything I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And I just hope that we have the commitment and perseverance to this. Because if we do, I think we'll see real change in the society. And that makes me encouraged.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ted. And we would like to, for now, let's go to ASANTEWA. So, when we're having these type of conversations, I tend to look within the African community a lot because, again, This is not a story that we have been exposed to, like Professor ADIBE was saying, in Africa. It's not even in our curriculum. They didn't even teach us our own history that much. So as Africans, we didn't have in-depth understanding or knowledge of the African history, let alone slavery. And Professor ADIBE, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe your time it was, but in my time, we weren't given that much education on slavery. And so we don't necessarily see it. And when we come here, we basically fall in line with all the negative vibes when it comes to the African-American community, and we follow through it. And so we develop certain attitudes. Now, again, to some friends and some people that I have conversations with, when we engage when we engage and talk about these things, it's not about hate or it's not about racism or hate for another community or another race. No, because we do understand that the abolitionists were not blacks. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, ASANTEWA, Dr. ASANTEWA. Well, Dr. ASANTEWA is shaking her head, so correct me. I feel like the abolitionists aided in ending slavery, and there were a lot of course, Caucasian white people that helped in the freedom of black people. So now, so when we say these things, we're not talking about the white race and saying all of them are bad. It is an issue in America or within the black community or in the society that has been identified. And for the purposes of this show, we always want to look at the diaspora, the African connection to the story of the African Americans. And so for those of you who may have other ideas or may have opposing views to what we're doing, just a little clarification. But Dr. ASANTEWA, please go ahead and rebut what I said first, and then you can respond to the question that I asked earlier. People say it's enough already. Let's move on. Why are African Americans or black people always talking about these issues? But please go ahead.
So I just wanted to say that there were many, 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 and we still are learning their names, black abolitionists, and really events and instances like the Underground Railroad would not have been successful, because believe it, when I say Europeans were not going into the South to relieve anybody of slavery. You had to make your way north and they would help you along if you made your way north. So to get out of the South, you were dependent on black abolitionists who were in the South, some of them stationed there benignly, some of them pastors, some of them blacksmith, letting you know that if you're going to do this, this is how you do it. Right, and we're still learning their names. We know that Illinois, right where we are, is the second most crossed state on the Underground Railroad. And even where I am sitting right now is part of a route next to Salt Trail, a route that people took. Now, how did they know to do this?
Where is that?
I'm in the south suburbs in Park Forest, Illinois. These were routes. How did they know? This information was in the community of African people. You have right here in Illinois the first sanctuary cities in the United States formed for African people who were courageous enough to cross the Missouri, to cross the Mississippi, to get out of Kentucky or Tennessee, to cross the Ohio, to get into into the north. Anybody that courageous, here were sanctuary cities like Brooklyn, Illinois, situated as a place that you could come. New Lenox, Illinois. I'm sorry, not New Lenox. I want to remember that name right. It's leaving me now. But the gentleman who set it up, Frank McWhorter, said he set up a city on a hill that could not be hid. New Philadelphia was the name of his town, and he would walk the banks of the river every night, hitting his lantern, saying, "Is somebody trying to cross the river?" Right? To come across, somebody like him, his image should be plastered all over this state if we're really about the freedom-loving values that we espouse. And furthermore, I just want to say, in terms of when people say, well, it's a tired story, we've talked about slavery, we're done. Well, are you done talking about Citibank? Are you done talking about Berkshire and Hathaway? Are you done talking about University of Chicago? All of those institutions, and I can keep going. Yale, Harvard, you could just name all your Ivy League schools. All of them have that slavery blood on their hands. They would not exist but for the institution of slavery. So when you're done talking about the legacy and beating up your jaws about how great they are and how, they're longstanding 300 years institution, we got to understand how they started. The president of Harvard had to close Harvard when Harvard first opened because he was infested with rats. And he took himself down into the Caribbean where we have the most wealthy, in quotes here, slave owners called planters, having 3 growing seasons a year. He went down into the Caribbean and said, you know what, listen, guys, I know you're making money hand over fist. Listen, just give me some of it and endow me, and I'll put your name on buildings. And that's all you see around in these Ivy League schools. And they're just now, because of student protests coming down, it's the names of families from the Caribbean, families from the United States who made their money by exploiting other human beings and trafficking other human beings. Their names are plastered all over in quote, old America. So I'm saying when you're ready to take care of that, then we can stop talking about slavery. But as long as the University of Chicago is standing and hasn't acknowledged that they had distinct ties. You know, and the other, a couple years ago, I went to the only historical preservation society that it still was then run by an African American in Illinois. And she was telling me that she was doing research on her family. She was at the Douglas site, you know, from the Lincoln Douglas debates. You know, and she was doing research on her family, and the Douglas descendants still come every year and visit his gravesite because it's right off 35th. I'm not real familiar with the city because I live in South, but it's right in that area. And she said his descendants come every year. And she said 1 year, you know, they had always been telling her that they never owned slaves. They were just, you know, they were abolitionists. And she said she started to do her family history. She realized her family was owned by the Douglas family, who bought up all that territory where the University of Chicago now stands. And when she confronted them about it, they left. They left the meeting without addressing it. And some of the younger parts of the family came back and said, you know, we always knew that. We always knew that. We just not saying it. So I'm saying there's still even more for us to uncover. We cannot be silent about it. And one of the things that really hurts me, and I want to say this quickly and give someone else a chance to go, that really hurts me is that my students say to me all the time that they notice that African people coming in, be them coming from the Caribbean or they're coming from the continent of Africa, enjoy the freedoms that African Americans here have had to labor for without knowing, without appreciating, without saying thank you. Today we can go just about to any school we want, we can work wherever we want, we can basically live wherever we want. But those freedoms weren't free. And people had to face shot and shell for that. But I always say, you know, it is not that they are unappreciative of you. It is that they don't know. So I am in perfect harmony with what Professor ADIBE said, that, listen, colonialism has worked. It has isolated me from you. I don't know your story. I come in here really trying to change life for family that I have back there. And, you know, like even $100 a month will make the world of difference to them. So I'm about working, and I'm about working as hard as I can, even as 2 or 3 jobs at a time. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, yeah, I'm tuned out to what you're talking about, but at the same time, I'm enjoying it. So what is needed here is education. And the family has had to sit down at the table, and we have to understand ourselves that we are family. And as you said at the beginning of the show, that our destiny is interlaced together. So I really appreciate a chance to share, and I do have to leave the show early, but I really, really appreciate a chance to share.
I know today's show we're gonna end today's show in the next 5 minutes. So today we're gonna do it quick because I know Ted has to go as well, and so we're going to wrap up soon. So let me just give a chance to Dr. ADIBE to add quickly to what you said, Yeah, I'm sure he has some comment, and I know I interrupted him earlier. Let me just give his comment, and then maybe Ted can say something real quick, some things that he's looking at, and then we can end the show if you don't mind.
Okay, thanks. To Dr. ASANTEWA, very well said. I couldn't add one thing to what he said. Very well said. The one thing I want to bring up, and it goes back to Ted's comment about capitalism, is the idea of freedom that we're capturing in Juneteenth. You see, there is freedom, and then there is effective freedom. In other words, okay, you're free, right? These are folks who were denied every single right, especially right of property, for generations. And suddenly they are told you are free. Free to do what? Right? They had to fight their way from then on. No property. Never end a wage.
Never end
Work
a
for
wage.
free.
That's the point. Never end a wage, man.
Okay. So how do you move on? How do you obtain that freedom? It's the same case in post-colonial Africa. You're independent. You're free. How do you move on?
You are free, but you don't control your resources.
You don't control anything. So it's about making freedom effective. I go back to South Africa only to make this point. In South Africa, they did something extraordinary after apartheid. They said, okay, we need Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Again, to prevent what has happened in the US, where we didn't know slavery was this bad. Or slavery was bad, we ended it, and proclamation happened, and civil rights happened. Why are you complaining? Well, South Africa did the Truth and Reconciliation so everybody could look at it. It was cathartic for some people. It was very uncomfortable. The United States, I find, has been, and I think Ted captured that really well. The US refuses to confront slavery. It makes people really uncomfortable and sometimes angry and defensive. But you know what they discovered? They hit a snag when it came to effective freedom. Reparations. TRC did everything else except reparation. How do you get these people who've been denied all these things? Their land was taken. The economic freedom was taken. How do they build a new life? I hope that when we have Juneteenth as a federal holiday, and we're going to remember Martin Luther King's last push for economic empowerment. I think we often forget Operation Push was really about that, right? Economic empowerment. I hope that when Juneteenth becomes an official federal holiday, the next step in the process of reconciliation will be to address the economic denial and structural economic injustice that Black people have faced in the United States. Yeah. Second to that is the universal nature of this problem. I think we're in the US, so we tend to say America, America. It's more than that. Look at what has happened in Britain. Just look at young Prince Harry and Markle. And boom, we've got a nuclear war in Britain. Where is that coming from? It's the same structural racism. So it's going to be a global project. I want to say this. If America gets it right, the rest of the world will get it right.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. I know, Dr. ASANTEWA, I know you have to leave. If you have the next 5 minutes, or that, if you have the next 5 or 10 minutes to spare, okay, good. All right, Ted. I know if you have a quick comment to make to what has been said so far, please go ahead. If not, what I want us to take the next 7 minutes or so to look at is the significance of Juneteenth to Africans. And I really want us to drive this message home, because we look at it and we hear Juneteenth, and sometimes it just goes over our head, goes through one year, comes into 1 year and goes through the other. How can we as Africans, from Ted, what do you think that the African community can do to basically tie our stories or our struggles into the Juneteenth symbolism, because I know you have attended a lot of African events. You come to, and even Napa. I know you were. I don't know if you were a board member, but you were a staunch member of that organization, which is solely Nigerian professional community. So what can we do? What do you expect from the African community and the Caribbean community as well?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I will have to step out after this this comment, but I've really enjoyed the other panelists. Thank you all so much. I've learned from you all, and I have enjoyed hearing you as well. Thank you. I really believe that we must understand that we are one, just as you do, Brother Alenko. You have worked to make sure that connection is strong, and I am with you on that. I am proud to be African American, but I am super proud to be African and to be connected and to understand and to learn. There has been so much destruction of that bond that is there, that is so natural. We're really only one group that is separated by stops on a ship tour. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's really what we are.
Right.
And so, yes, I love Napa and the Nigerian community. I think it is, for me, a rekindling, a connection. It reminds me of Joseph and his brothers in the biblical story, when Joseph was separated from his brothers and they had sold him into slavery, and he had gone and he came back, and the brothers were afraid that he was going to retaliate and there was going to be no connection. And Joseph just was grateful to be connected to them.
Right.
And I think that is what it is. And I appreciate what the sister said about just understanding the struggles that have occurred so that everyone could benefit. I think that level of respect is so important. But I think on the flip side, there has to be a level of respect as well. I think as Americans, we are very ethnocentric, even as African Americans. And so as Americans, we don't necessarily want to do the hard work of learning other people's cultures because we believe that the world revolves around us. And African Americans are just as guilty of that as other groups in this country. And so we have to continue to do what we're doing. We have to continue to educate, inspire, connect, share culture. And I believe that we are stronger together than we are apart. Exactly. And so I am very proud to always come when I'm invited by you, because these conversations change lives, they change communities. I believe they will change the world. God bless you guys. Thank you so much.
God bless you. Now, Dr. ASANTEWA, I know you have to leave. If you have your last words for us regarding, I know you have a Caribbean heritage too, and so if you can speak to that, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but but again, how do we get the Africans and Caribbeans specifically to tie or get involved in the celebration of Juneteenth, not just Juneteenth, but in the affairs of the African American?
Well, previous Sunday, I spoke at the church where I grew up, which is a Jamaican church, and it virtually has stayed the same. I mean, and I think we have to begin with what is important to that community. I mean, in that community, it is endlessly important to work and send your children to school. This is what they come here for. And they will eat canned food every day of the week if they get that goal.
Right.
So we start there and we say I deeply understand this, but understand that you wouldn't be able to send your child to these schools. These schools were essentially closed to us until civil rights legislation. We need to talk about how we got here. And then I need you to lend your support to making sure that we as a people move forward while you're here. It is not okay to just work here, retire, and go home, have a home somewhere else, and so you're not concerned about this home here, And I found that people were very sensitive, and they were willing to send letters to Governor Pritzker, adding pressure that he should sign it into law as a state holiday in Illinois. They were willing. So it's just meeting people where they are, and understanding them and letting them see the possibilities. I really think that's the way forward.
You think that is very important for the African American community, for our the African community, the African and Caribbean involvement in your affairs? You think that it's very needed and very, very important?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Particularly as you have children here. I mean, chances are very high that they will marry somebody here. You know, you need to know what's up. It's not okay to keep blinders on and just say, you know, I'm here to work. You know, this then becomes part of the problem. Right. There is no neutral space. You have to throw your weight behind the people from whose efforts you have benefited.
Thank you so much, Dr. ASANTEWA. We are pleased to have you once again on this platform. We hope that in the future we can get you again, probably still a little longer, because these conversations are deep. And so we really appreciate your time to get out of a very busy schedule. We're looking forward to seeing you now. Go out there, enjoy this weather, and do your thing, Dr. ASANTEWA. See you again. Now, so now we're left with Dr. ADIBE. You and I can rumble and tumble the whole evening. We don't have anybody to share the space with. Dr. ADIBE, from what you've said, I think it's very profound that as African, we understand that a lot of the things that we're enjoying in this country are as a result of the sweat and blood of the African American. And I'm speaking to the African community and the Caribbean community. And this is why I always say to my African community, I always say to my African community, the Ghanaian community, Nigerian community, that the word akata is not a right word. It's derogatory, okay? It is derogatory. It is not any word that we should use against or use to address anybody. And some of you know it. You still use it, because you say, okay, we use it only when we are within the African community. We use it only when we are at home, when we are talking to just ourselves and we're not out there. But let your conscience speak to you. Let's be very circumspect to dignity and respect for the human race in general. And let's understand that some of these things that we do, and the reason why we continuously use the word akata is because we have not thought of we have not thought of ourselves and our identity. We have not really sat down to look at who we are, where we are from, and our dignity as a people, because we do this back home. If you're in a Nigerian community, or if you're Nigerian or Ghanaian, we do this back home. We call each other names. We come up with little funny nicknames for each other due to tribalism, due to all these divisions. And everybody can say what they want to say, how tribalism got into Africa and whatnot. But the thing is that we have continued whatever negatives or whatever inhumane behaviors and gestures, we have perpetuated it, even if we did not start it. And so we have to catch ourselves and to try to create this awareness and to learn and to educate ourselves to desist from hating each other by way of the name calling. We are too known for that. We have lived too long for these type of things that has derailed our society as a people. Because once you call someone a nickname, a derogatory nickname, that does not signify positivity. In your head, you've already written them off. You've already checked them out. So how can you relate? How can you do business? How can you think with your neighbor when you've already checked them out by you calling them a derogatory nickname when you were at home? But when you look them in the face, when you meet them outside, you are smiling at them. But in your heart and in your mind, you have all this hate for them, even if you don't have hate for them, for the mere fact that you consistently call people a derogatory name, it shows your heart. And so we ought to stop this tribalistic attitudes that we have brought from wherever we came from African continent, the Caribbean. I don't know about the Caribbean community, but I know for a fact, West Africa, Ghana, and Nigeria, we use this word, and even in Ghana. So if you don't know, I'm telling you as an African now, as a Ghanaian and as a Nigerian, that Google the word akata and see what it means. It's derogatory. We don't have to use it again. If you don't know now, you know. If you hear someone saying it, let's keep educating ourselves that we don't have to keep calling people derogatory names. Let alone look at ourselves and call ourselves all these nicknames that we do because of our tribal differences. having a tribe and identifying your tribe and knowing where you're from in itself is a good thing. But being a tribal bigot is what is not going to help our society. He has not proven to help us, and it's not going to help us as a people. And I just wanted to take this few seconds to address that. Again, Professor ADIBE, I think that you and I are here. Please go ahead and respond to some of the things that Dr. ASANTEWA and Clement said that you wanted to, and then we can try and wrap up the conversation for this evening.
Oh, even me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, thanks. Oh, I thought we were opening it up. Oh, no, I really appreciate that. I think you are spot on. Bigotry is a universal thing. It is always easy to say someone is a racist, but not you. In my native African culture, we have a saying that when you have one finger pointing at someone, four are pointing at you.
Exactly.
I think you made that point very clearly. There are many ways that we show condescension towards each other, whether it is class or race or ethnicity or religion. All of that is there. For your listeners here, there is a book I would really like to recommend, not least because it's a very moving book. It's easy to read, by Trevor Noah. It's called, the title is Born a Crime. And it's really an autobiography. It's talking about his life growing up in South Africa under the racist system. And he elaborates on this thing he calls self-hate. And he says that's one of the biggest and most insidious legacies of apartheid. Self-hate. When people have been oppressed for so long, they imbibe self-hate.
Yeah.
And that is very destructive because he gains a momentum of his own. He generates his own momentum and he perpetuates. Look at the problem on the continent of Africa. Groups hating each other. The problem of ethnicity in Africa, I say sometimes, is as bad as racism.
Of course.
Internationally, if not worse.
Yeah.
So it comes from that self-hate. People have internalized it. And so, yes, the key there is education. Now, by education, I don't mean literacy.
Yeah.
Is take a look at the curriculum. How are people socialized? Right? I was involved. There is an internal discussion we're having at DEPAUL about just student exchange. We have exchanges in American universities between American students and European colleges, and increasingly Asian colleges, China, Japan, the usual. Very few in Africa for all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
But look at what that has done. It has denied both Africans and young American students that opportunity to interact within a cultural setting so that they know each other. When I was in school, in high school, we had students in my class from South Africa. We had students from the United States. You know, maybe they were born here and their parents are Nigerians or Africans and ended up in those days, they would send their kids home to Africa to learn some culture. And we learned a few things about the United States where we've read about but never really knew. Right there in the classroom. That's gone.
Yeah.
So we have to find a way to make the link between the African diaspora and Africans real.
Yeah.
We also have to find a way in our curriculum. I'm talking about young people. I think in our last meeting here, I said there are a certain group of Africans who should be able to, quote unquote, write off in the sense you can't change them. They're made.
Yeah, they're gone.
Let's focus on the young ones.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
We ought to have a space in our curriculum where Africans should be able to go and spend a term, a semester in each other African country schools.
Yeah.
Just to gain a sense of what the continent is. I find that the level of ignorance, and I don't use that lightly, is stunning.
Yeah, it is. Right. It is.
So education for me is the key.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let me get this comment real quick and see if we can try to wrap up. This is from Ate. He says, I agree. The white man in America has never and will never see the black man as equal. They will forever feel they are superior to we black people. I believe in hard work and determination, but the white man supposes that the playing field is level and hard work will lead to success. They disagreed everything. They disregard everything they have done overtly and covertly to undermine our success. Now, Professor David, would you? Thank you so much, my brother Ate, for that response. And again, the argument in the African community is that, oh, now all white people are bad, you know, and of course that's true. And so, but his statement is general. Would you want to comment on his statement real quick? And because I don't believe in a generalization of all white people. So personally, but I don't know what you have to say to it.
On the comment that the brother made.
Yes, about all, you know.
I think he's referring to, I believe, you know, I mean, as far as generalizations go,
yeah,
it doesn't mean every white person.
There you go.
I think he's referring to structural impediments that African Americans face. Exactly. I think as a society, that has tended to be neglected. I mean, something as recent as redlining. I mean, if you can think of redlining, existed in this country, right? Is the equivalent of Bantustans in South Africa. You know, you can only live in a particular area. Yeah. That happened. So there are structural obstacles that Blacks have faced in the United States, and as a society, I don't think it's been well appreciated.
Right. No, thank you.
And so we need to demolish them.
Mm-hmm. So, as a professor, and what do you think that Africans can practically do to, because we're saying, oh, the African connection to the Juneteenth, you know, we're talking about, you know, working, getting connected, and Africans realizing that, you know, realizing the work the African American has done, and do something to, you know, support their cause, or at least acknowledge what they have been struggling for all these centuries. So what do you think, as a professor and as a leader in the community, that we can do practically as a people to kind of help this cause?
By Africans, you mean Africans in the United States?
Africans in the United States.
Yes. Well, first off, I don't think this is a problem that all Africans have.
Exactly.
Okay?
So
we've got to break that down as well.
Exactly, to the point you made earlier. Because
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And we also have to recognize that there's no good way of saying this. There are lots of Africans who are just trying to find their way. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's immigration. It has its own obstacle. I mean, it's one of those systemic issues.
We have internal struggle.
Trying to understand, how do I get from Argyle to Lincoln Park? How do I catch red line, and what's the difference between purple line and green? So talking about Juneteenth, that's a layer of complexity that is just way beyond their ability to comprehend. So we have to. So it's not as if they don't care.
There you go.
But there are structural impediments, you know, that make it very difficult for them to associate at that high level.
Gotcha.
But I think for the vast majority of Africans in the United States, anyone who says they do not understand what African Americans born here and bred here go through is a liar. We've all been subjected one way or the other to the racism that our brothers and sisters who've been here for centuries have lived all their lives. I think oftentimes the difference, and this is where that 300-year gap thing comes in, and I think the point that the sister was trying to make, the way Africans, many Africans, not all, have dealt with it is, I'm a temporary visitor. Okay, I'm here. I'm here for 10 years, I'm here for 20 years, and I'll be going back home.
I'm here for the money. And
Nobody goes. No,
yeah.
well, not necessarily the money because we don't have it.
well,
You know?
no,
but
I think it's one mind. That's
Well-
that's the mindset, right? We're coming to make money,
well,
right?
I don't know about money.
the
Could be,
whole-
we are trying to survive, okay?
Okay.
Or you know.
Oh, for you
succeed,
say,
however we
well,
define
okay,
it.
you are trying to articulate this in a professorial,
Okay.
mindset, from a professorial mindset.
Okay.
But the thing is, we can't find money, go build
Okay.
a home in Ghana,
Okay.
or in Nigeria, in Africa, build
Yeah.
a home, get a car there,
Yeah.
so that we can go back and enjoy it. That is
And the truth is that it's a lie because we're
Well,
not going back.
It's not really, yeah, true. Because there are Africans who have built Africans who have built mansions, 10-bedroom mansions,
and nobody's going.
literally spend maybe 2% of their lifetime there.
Yeah, but you see, Alinko, it's a survival mechanism.
Yeah,
it is the way we're able to say, okay, when we confront those daily obstacles that our native-born Black brothers and sisters go through, okay. Those of us who are immigrants, we bounce back and go, okay, we tell ourselves, okay, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Remember home, I'm going back home, I'm going back home, right?
Yeah.
To get to the next day.
Mhm.
So it is, we should differentiate that from apathy. Okay. In other words, we don't care.
Exactly.
No, I think the vast majority of Africans here understand the challenge that we face and that our African American brothers and sisters have faced. What I find missing, and I continue to say this, is that we don't have an institutional link, and I blame this on the elites on both sides of the continent, right? Okay. We don't have an institutional link to tap that. Jesse Jackson has done a tremendous amount of work to bring the two together. We need more of that.
With the Rainbow Push?
Yes, we need more of that to bridge that gap. I met Trinidadian, is that the right word for Trinidad, and Jamaican immigrants. You know, when I was in graduate school in New York, not where I went to grad school, but I met them in New York, and they're New Yorkers who at that time had been here 30, 40 years and were close to retirement, and they were saying, you know, I'm going back home. And I would say to myself, no, you're not. This is home. Okay.
Yeah, this is home.
This is home.
Yeah.
But that is the immigrant story. And I don't think that Africans are alone in that. It's an immigrant story, whether you're Vietnamese or, you know, so we have to make that
distinction.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So it's an immigrant story, but in the even the immigrant community, we're broken into different races and different ethnic groups, right? And as Black people, I think it's our responsibility, and knowing that not just Black people, but we have a direct connection.
Yeah,
you know, our history tells us that our ancestors perpetuated in slavery and all of that, right? So when we come here, it's like Ted was saying earlier, is that the Joseph and the his brother's story, right? They sold him to slavery, all of that. So it's the onus lies on us as African to try to make that connection.
Yes.
Okay. And so you see, like, again, to the story that you just narrated of, we think that we're coming here to make money or to, look for wealth or, struggle, whatever, find a better life and then go back home and rest. But it's never true, because even when you come here and spend most of the time here, you retire at the age of 70, 80, whatever, and you go back to Africa, they still come here for medical checkup. You come here for, so why are we, lying to ourselves? We build all these mansions in Africa. We don't get to stay in them. Our families live in them. We spend money in maintaining these houses, and we are here and we are enjoying off of the back of the struggle of African Americans for their sweat and blood for decades, for centuries. Right. And we are not necessarily acting as though, for those who are aware. Right. And so, again, points noted that there are impediments that hinders a lot of Africans from acknowledging some of these high level community involvement projects, Juneteenth, Black Lives Matter, all of these things. But there's a lot too, and this is why I disagree with you at Professor ADIBE. I believe that, contrary to what you're saying, I believe that majority of the Africans here, okay, are aware, and I think it's more of apathy than internal impediments that are literally blocking them. I think majority are aware of the struggle. They see it, but I think, for me, I think it's always about that innate tribalistic attitude. So even though we see it, we don't have the impetus, we don't have that edge to do something about it, to add our voice to it, to get involved, right? Because first of all, even as much as educated a lot of us are here, that tribalism is still there, Professor ADIBE. We don't. You could be doctor. You could be professor. You could be what engineer, but you see another tribe as somebody you don't have to talk to. We do that to ourselves. And again, it's the foundation, I think, of how we treat African Americans here, because we don't like ourselves that much, and we show that it's not easy. It doesn't become easy for us to acknowledge the African American who's American and has somewhat a different culture from us, to associate ourselves with, in addition to some of the negative news that we hear, as though we hear about the African American community, as though in Africa we don't have negative news. You and I know firsthand that if you go to Africa, it's all these crazy things that we indulge ourselves in, from armed robbery to murders, to rituals, to all the crazy things that we deal with. For some reason, when we come to the West, when we come to America and we look at the African American community, oh, there is a crime on the South Side. Oh, somebody robbed somebody. Oh, this thing happened. We see this on TV and we conclude and we say, oh, African Americans are crazy. Oh, African Americans are this and they are that. But all I'm saying is that some of these nuances that we would identify or see or perceive in the African American community, we have 10 times that in our communities back in Africa, if not even in our own small secular communities in the United States. And I think that's my point. And I feel like the educated ones, those who are aware, this is a time that we have to start, restructuring some of these things. We have to start unlearning some of the negative things that we have unlearned. Professor ADIBE, please.
No, I agree completely. We have to unlearn a lot of them. And again, I go back to where we began. I think we should also remember that many of us were not taught these things.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, of course.
We left Africa with very little knowledge of our brothers and sisters.
Exactly.
So that gap is huge.
Very, very.
And then we come here, and then we get into our whatever professional thing we're going into, and completely miss out on the opportunity to learn about them.
Exactly.
Right. So we need institutional frameworks, very active institutional frameworks to engage Africans and African Americans.
That's true.
And that is true for here. It is also true for
Africa,
England, Europe. I can tell you how many times. Look, again, I think part of the thing, just look at where we live and how we live, right? An African comes into town in Chicago, you are more likely, how did you even know about Chicago? Maybe because of a fellow African from your village or from your country. And where do you live? You live with him or her in that section of town. Now, where do the rest of your brothers and sisters live? You have no idea.
Right.
So your interaction with Chicago is that African or brother or sister that you brought you here or you killed. And from there is a straightforward journey. So it's the story of migration one, but when you layer that on top of the lack of knowledge to begin with,
exactly,
then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we have to engage in a lot of active education.
You know what's funny? A lot of active education. I strongly agree with you. What is funny is that I've talked to a lot of Africans who say, you know what, they live on the north side, and they say they will tell me, I'm never going to cross McCormick to go to the south side.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes if you look, and you know, the north side is some of the communities on the north side is choked. There's there's no parking. It's very tight. It's crowded, and so they don't come to the south side. And I'll live on the south. What I've noticed over the past 5, 6, 7 years is that a lot of Caucasians have moved down here because guess what? The south side is close to the lake. There are beautiful houses just on the north side. The houses are cheaper because a lot of people are now coming here. Beautiful homes, cheaper than on the north side. So you have other races. You have Middle Eastern. You have Caucasian. You have Hispanic people moving to the south side and purchasing all these nice homes. And we are stuck on the north side in very small spaces, and we are paying more on the north comparable to what we could have gotten here. And so we are just not helping ourselves by not educating ourselves. And when you talk about educating ourselves, one of the things that come to my mind is that, Dr. ADIBE, I have realized this, that I've met a lot of African Americans who are keen on knowing the African history.
Exactly.
They read about us. They study our history, study our culture. Yeah. But you hardly will meet a lot of Africans, even the most highly educated ones, who will say, you know what, I went to the plantation in I went to visit one of the plantations in South Carolina, or I went to visit maybe an African American slavery museum, or maybe I read an article on slavery. You hardly will hear any African tell you about, oh, I'm trying to research them, or I'm trying to know their history too, or I'm trying to go to a Juneteenth or Bad Billiken on the south side here. Yeah, we just don't seem to want to learn about fellow blacks.
There is no basis for it.
There's no
basis. Senegalese in Dakar never went to Gorée Island. Yeah. How many Ghanaian kids went to Emira Castle?
Went to even
So and they go to
before you continue.
Level, they go to A level, they proceed to Legon. They've never been to Emira Castle.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. And then you see African Americans here save up a lot of money.
Yeah.
Buy a ticket to go down to Emira Castle.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Because they learned it at school.
They learned it at school, and we didn't learn it.
We didn't learn it.
Yeah, that's what you did. Exactly. It's true, because I walked past the castle, the door of no return is in Accra.
Yeah.
Okay. Now and the Accra Sports Stadium is right there by the castle. I have walked past that door of no return castle several times growing up in Accra as a child, and had no knowledge its significance. All I know is that it was a fort, it was a castle, the British, whatever, came there. But the history of slavery and how they were kept in a room and the door of no return, zero. Yeah. I've literally walked on those shores where the door of no return is. I've seen it with several years, decades, and had no idea. So when I came here again, great point, Dr. ADIBE. There's no basis for our connectivity. We don't know it. And so that is why we're doing what we're doing. Right?
And I want to go back to where those before us left.
Okay.
And that broken link, I think we ought to be able to reestablish.
Yeah.
Kwame Nkrumah came after Nnamdi Azikiwe. Nnamdi Azikiwe came here as a very young man, to college, and ended up in Lincoln, right? Where he was schooled by African Americans. In those days, I mean, blacks did not go to universities except those that are specifically for blacks. So they were taught by African Americans. They had to learn it.
Right.
And look at the energy that they brought back home.
Exactly. That's true.
Right.
Right.
They have to learn it from the scratch.
Yeah.
As young adults. Right. That is a privilege many of us do not have.
That's true.
And I would like us to find a way to make that systematic.
Okay.
So that every child born in Africa has that experience.
That is a very great point. Every child born in Africa has that experience. That's very monumental. That's very visionary. You were watching the Progressive Mind Show. Today is June 16th. In 3 days, we'll be celebrating Juneteenth. And so we have dedicated this platform, this episode to look at Juneteenth, its significance, what it means to the Black race entirely, whether you live in a diaspora on the continent of Africa or in Brazil, South America in general. We want to touch on these things that matter, and so if you just join in, that is what we have done, what we have been trying to do. Earlier we had Professor Ted Williams III, who is always a friend to this platform, comes here and helps us to understand some of these things. Dr. ASANTEWA, also of DePaul University, professor in history, also was on the platform earlier. They had to take leave, and so myself and Professor ADIBE, we're just trying to look at these things that hinder our connectivity as Black people, and also the significance of Juneteenth. We're looking at the diaspora connection. So if you just joined us, this has been the episode for today, and this is how our conversation has been unfolding so far. We want to urge our listeners, if you're watching now, apart from my brother Ate Akron, okay, Pastor Ate Akron, you don't have to donate to the Progressive Minds anymore. This brother has been so a blessing. He's always been donating, supporting Progressive Minds. So this announcement is not going to you. It's going to everybody else that has not donated to the Progressive Minds yet. Okay, we are not for profit. We're waiting on our 501c, but please, if you support and admire and in favor of what we're doing, even if you're not in favor, we want you to support. Okay, please support us. Go on our website, theprogressivemindshow.com, and make a donation to us, because what we're doing, hinges a lot on expenses. We pay a lot of things and go through a lot of production process to get us here. And I would like to take this moment to thank the intern team that are working, the Progressive Minds team that are working behind the scenes to get this show going week in, week out, from Riley to Baba to Amanda to Bezawit, Katie, all of you, Yasmin, all of you. I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate the work that you've been putting in. Now, I just want to encourage the community to donate to our cause. Again, the website is thepmsshow.com. Thepmsshow.com. If you have Cash App, it is the Progressive Mind. No, it's the $ SENAALINCO. $SENAALINCO. You can make Cash App to us. You can also use info.progressiveminds to make a Zelle contribution to us. And I want to take this opportunity to especially thank, and I know he doesn't like his name to be out there, so I'll just use his first name, Dwayne. Dwayne, God richly bless you on this day of Juneteenth, on this episode, recognizing Juneteenth. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. My family want to thank you for a big donation that you made personally to the Progressive Mind Show. Now, it wasn't planned. We were just talking about how we can have some shows or how we can do some, work for the community. And out of nowhere, I did not even ask. And out of nowhere, you made the biggest donation I have ever gotten from anybody. And my heart goes out to you. I'll forever be indebted to you. Thank you so much for that help and even the thoughts for being there for what we're doing. God richly bless you and your family. And on that note,
thank you, Dwayne.
Sorry?
I said, thank you, Dwayne.
Yeah. No,
yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And so let's take this comment from Simon Aguero. He says, I think we need to shift our mindset. Who cares if white folks don't see us as equal? We need to start caring more about us and how we see ourselves. The more we focus on others, the more we lose our own race of development, growth, and education. Thank you so much, Simon Aguero, for bringing up a very valuable point. So, Professor ADIBE, I know we have touched on a few things here, but I asked this question again, and you gave me a response. But I still want to drive it home practically for those who are not apathetic to the cause of the African American, for those who are a little bit aware now. What can they do? What can we do practically? We have to go on the website to support the Black cause. Do we have to look for Black events? Juneteenth is around the corner, so there's so many events now. do we just have to leave our home and say, okay, I'm going to a Juneteenth event, and henceforth, I'm looking for African Americans events so I can attend and show my support? Because guess what? I can say this, and Professor Adibe, you've been in this city too for a long time. Tell me if I'm wrong. There isn't any African organization or event that has succeeded in the history of Chicago without the massive support and participation of the African American. At least in Chicago. That I guess because I live here. And I haven't lived here for long, but I've done a little bit of research. I followed some stories. They are at every event of the African community and in Caribbean. And I can say to the Caribbean to a large extent, and the Caribbean can challenge me, can take me on. Any festival that you know of, I'm not going to mention names because I don't own them, but any one that you know of in Chicago, the huge African festivals, if African Americans are not there, it's not. Thank you. He used the word, it's a flop. They have been at almost all of our events. They come in their numbers. They spend, they party, they laugh, they try to connect with us. They are the reasons why all these big festivals have succeeded, because they've supported with their money and with their everything. Ask yourself, if you're watching and listening to me now, how many African Americans have you attended? Have you even thought to donate to or support one way or the other? We can't live like that as a people. We can't live like that as a people. If anything, we have sojourned and come to their land, a land they built with their sweat and blood, and continue to build and continue to fight. And sometimes it looks like they're fighting alone until George Floyd came. Then a lot of people jumped on the one wagon, including a lot of Africans. But after George Floyd, all that energy from the African community is gone down. We don't have to wait for another George Floyd to say, or to say, to try to lend our support or try to get to know the community. We don't have to wait for that. We have to just acknowledge that we're one people. It's all one big community. And again, every community does it. Every ethnic group or race in America, they do it. There's a bigger Asian community, even though they are Chinese, Koreans, Vietnamese, but they understand a bigger community. And so they relate. They might not get along all the time, but as the sense of a bigger community is very, very important. Yeah. There is a Latinx community. So and as for the Caucasians, we don't have to say, because they are the majority, right? So to the points that we're making, just let's try and support as much as we can. Now that we know, now that we're trying to learn, let's do better. Dr. Wale Idris says, great job. Keep the positive momentum going strong. Thanks. Dr. Wale, I keep telling you that send me the flyer for your big events coming. Okay. You have a great, awesome, powerful event. I don't have the flyer. I want to be able to talk about it, or you can call in and let our audience know. It is 815-277-5047. Dr. Debbie, any other comments that you want to, put across before we end this evening's episode?
I want to second what you said in every way possible. We need to share information a lot, but we use the internet better, use the social media better. I think the more people are aware of the opportunities and the events to go to, the better. The African community, I'm talking now as a Nigerian, just to begin there, is so spread out. It really is. It's not monolithic. So we can't assume that people know.
Right.
So the more we can share information across networks, the better. We should take advantage of that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. As always, Professor Clement Adibe, a scholar at what he does and all that he surveys, a great gentleman in our community. We are pleased to have you, Professor. I think you are changing our world bit by bit, with your efforts and with your inputs and with all that you do. We appreciate you accepting to be on the show again, even after you've been on recently. we hope that in the near future, we can have you to engage on these matters. On that note, tomorrow at the Dusabo Museum, it is what we call Do Rhythm. Dusabo Museum is trying to partner with the Africans. They're trying to bring Afrobeat to Hyde Park. And so, you know, if you're aware of Dusabo Museum in Chicago, they have an annual jazz festival. They're including us now as Africans. So they're inviting us every Thursday from 7 to 9:30. They're inviting us to come play Afrobeat, play reggae, mingle, and just enjoy the summer. All right. So just Google Dusabo Museum. Tomorrow and every Thursday we are there. But tomorrow, make sure you can come and just have some fun and mingle. This evening, today's episode of The Progressive Minds, which we titled Juneteenth, the Diaspora Connection, has come to a very successful end, I think. And I want to leave all our audience with especially the African community. And I'm always going to say, I'm always going to use my platform to address these things because we need to do better. If you are already aware and already involved and already supporting, that's okay. But if you're not, we ask that at least where you can start from is to stop using the word akata. Henceforth, have a soul-searching moment for yourself. We're humans. Let's put everything on aside and look within yourself. Look in the mirror and ask if anyone were to be calling you that name, if anyone were to be referring to you a derogatory name, and you are aware, even if you're not aware, but you know that a certain group of people call you certain names, and more so when they have sojourned to your country. Because right now in Ghana, we have the most Chinese population. About 700,000 Chinese are in Ghana. Close to a million. I mean, it's only a matter of time before they're a million. Can you imagine? Can you imagine Chinese now living in Ghana and calling Ghanaians animals, and calling Ghanaians fools, and calling Ghanaians all types of derogatory names? Well, I don't think so. I don't think you can ever imagine that. And I don't think that as an African or as a Ghanaian, you're going to accept it. And so let's now do it. Recently, I saw a video of a Chinese beating up an African. I think it was in Ghana or Nigeria. I'm not sure. But a Chinese worker literally, beating up an African because the African was just doing his job. And we've seen so many videos of this, right? And so we can accept that being done to us in our own country. So why do we come to America and perpetuate these negative acts and negative behaviors? This attitude is not going to help us as a people. Let's look back into our community and see all the things that we have to deal with. Look back to Africa. Look back to where you come from in Africa, and look at all the crazy things that you have to deal with. The not impoliteness, but the social injustice that we face in Africa from our politicians. The recklessness as a people. We are not reckless, but I'm saying in every society there are negatives, right? So we see some of these negatives that we see here. It shouldn't. All I'm saying is that whatever we see in a community, whatever we hear or perceive from a particular community or race, should not give us the impetus to see them lesser or non-entities. It should not give us the right to disrespect them or to look down upon anybody, regardless of what you hear or see. Treat each individual with a benefit of doubt. Respect each and every individual until they prove you wrong. Give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Put a 10 on everyone. Self-respect would allow us to do that. And so as a people, let's do better. And I'm not talking to all Africans. I'm only talking to the people that know and realize this, but are not, working towards, improving on some of these negatives that exist in our communities. Again, if you know, do better. And if you don't know, now you know. Let's all try and do better so that we can make our community a healthy place. On that note, this episode has finally come to an end. And again, I would like to thank my guest, Ted Williams, Dr. ASANTEWA, and Dr. Clement ADIBE for your input, for your time. We look forward to engaging you again. On that note, I want to thank my audience as well. To God be the glory. I want to thank you all for your support. Those who have donated, again, thank you so much. We encourage you to keep donating. It's thepmsshow.com. Even if you type the Progressive Mind Show in Google, it will just come up. Go ahead and give your donation. You can also contact us at info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. You can also send WhatsApp, Cash App to the $ SENAALINCO. The $ SENAALINCO. A last comment came through. Abina Pokia says, thank you for addressing the issue of tagging our own people in such a disrespectful manner. Thank you so much, Abina, for chiming in. And yeah, please contact us at info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. The Cash App, don't forget, the Cash App is the $ SENAALINCO. All right, you can find us. Remember, to whom much is given, much is required. This has been Alinko with the Progressive Minds. We shall see you next week. No, not next week. This coming Sunday is Father's Day. So we're going to have a group of fathers to share their story. We are celebrating Father's Day. Dr. ADIBE, happy Father's Day in advance.
Thank you very much, Alinko, and thanks for everything you do on this show.
Thank you.
God bless you.
I don't think, amen to that. I don't think we celebrate you guys enough, Dr. ADIBE. Father. Right? I don't think we take time. I don't think the world takes time to celebrate fathers enough the way we do mothers.
African fathers don't need to be celebrated. We are just okay. We are glad to see everyone living well. That's all. I'm okay for that. Yeah. We don't want to draw attention to ourselves. No, absolutely not.
Are you sure okay? You're not speaking to all African fathers. You're speaking for yourself.
I think a lot of African fathers, African mothers. God bless you all. All mothers everywhere. God bless you all.
That's powerful. Yeah. That's very powerful. All right. Again, remember, to whom much is given, much is required. See you this Sunday, 2 to 4 p.m. Chicago time, 7 to 9 Ghana time, 8 to 10 p.m. Nigeria time. God bless you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yep.